Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Nigel Richard. I'm a career teacher. I was trained as a teacher. I've worked as a teacher. And now I'm leading the Global Teachers Institute. And we're an organization full of former teachers and current teachers. We're surrounded by teachers. We work with teachers all day, every day. So we really are teacher-obsessed and teacher-focused and teacher-centric. And our work evolved from a network of schools here in South Africa through the South African Extraordinary Schools Coalition, and particularly a network of schools called the Leap Science and Math Schools, which some of you might have heard of. And some of the founding teachers of the Institute are former Leap teachers who've come from the Leap Science and Math space. And we've had a singular focus at the GTI, so Global Teachers Institute, or GTI, and it really is to solve the nagging question or the challenge of how to produce a quantity of teachers, a large amount of teachers of high quality. And the conversation has shifted in the last 2 years in South Africa. In the last 3 or 4 years ago, the conversation was around quantity. And the Funza Lushaka bursary, which some people might know about, has largely closed that gap. It's debatable, but government can claim that they essentially are producing enough teachers. So the conversation has shifted largely to quality. So what is a quality teacher, and how these teachers that are in this system can be measured on quality and produce quality teaching and instruction. So for us, the challenge really is about how to develop systems, programs, methods, curriculum, and workshops to produce quantity and quality. The quantity issue is still nagging in a few areas, in primary school, in math, science, and African languages. So when you hear that the quantity issue has been solved, it's been solved overall, but there's huge need still in the system in areas, and demographically, people are not going to rural areas or to underserved populations. So there's a surplus of teachers in some areas and a dearth of teachers in some other areas. And for us at GTI, the quality question is really about developing a reflective practitioner. So I think there's a lot of tech people in this room, and it's an industry that I imagine moves quite quickly. And the education space, while the system doesn't move quite quickly, students move extremely fast. You have 1 year maximum with them, and the outside forces are impacting the classroom environment and the school environment quite quickly. So we also are having to catch up with what works, and by the time the education system sometimes has learned what works for a grade 1 student, that grade 1 student's already in grade 4 or grade 8 or already in high school or already left the system. So the challenge inside of education is how to capture learning and insights fast enough to integrate them back into the system to impact the learners that you just learned from. So the research loop, which is necessary and valuable, the challenge is to get that moving fast enough, because your grade 1 population that you just researched, if it takes 5 years to circle back to the classroom, has already changed, and the dynamics and the context and the needs of that grade 1 learner have already changed quite drastically. So for us, the mantra, the design philosophy is about not doing things better, but doing things differently. And we're building on some methods of distance and leveraging capacities. So we don't build a lot of facilities. We don't have training facilities throughout the country. The idea is to leverage capacity wherever it is, enrich that capacity, and enhance those spaces so that eventually those spaces won't need external providers like ourselves, and have the internal mechanisms and human resources and other resources to develop their own teachers and the learning objectives of their learners as well. So for us, that's really driven us to think differently about how to do teacher development. To talk a little bit about some of our work before highlighting some of the partner work, is sort of trying to reimagine the university. And one of the big challenges with developing enough teachers for this system is there aren't enough universities. So WITS, UJ, UCT, and so on, the 24 or odd universities in the country can't produce enough teachers. So UNISA is currently producing the most amount. I'm not sure the number exactly, but I think there's about 40,000 teachers studying to be teachers at UNISA, and they will continue to be the #1 provider of teachers into the future. There's a belief, and probably a valid belief, that you can't do teacher education via distance. But essentially, how else are we going to close the quantity and quality gap than by distance? So for us, we've taken on this design challenge in a way to find out how can you create teachers at scale via distance without putting everyone in front of a teacher trainer or not everyone inside of a classroom. So we've used some sharing economy principles, and what one of our major programs we're trying to do is turn secondary and primary schools into sites of teacher education and to become university sites. And what we're doing essentially is to elevate schools' thinking and capacity to go from sites of learning to adult learning and teacher learning, so that they become essentially learning laboratories where teachers are learning alongside the learning of students as well. And so for us, we think leveraging the capacity, turning schools into universities is going to be a mechanism of which we can close the gap, ensure quality, and also get the numbers that we need. And of course, this has driven us to look for EdTech solutions, both internally and externally, because we don't want to be everywhere, but we want to impact everywhere. And this has also driven us to some real insights about what teachers want, what they don't want, what school leaders want, what learners want, and what works in a context and an environment. And if you're going to do scale in South Africa, you're going to have to work with the government. And those conversations and collaborations and partnerships with us have driven us into parts of the country that are maybe less attractive. But Cape Town, Joburg, and Durban are essentially well served. That's not where the learners need us. That's also not where the resources are, but that's where the work needs to be done. And those schools don't often have the basic resources that some of us might be designing around, assuming that there's internet, assuming that there's somewhere where you can lock devices. These are all assumptions that are not a given in a majority of classrooms and schools in South Africa. And that context has just been a really fertile place for us to start our work. So that's essentially where we're steeped in, and that's sort of the context of which we do our work. And the sort of sharing economy principles as well is that we work a lot through partnerships. And some of the work we'll showcase today is about not a program of our own or an EdTech piece of our own, but a piece of work through paper video and through a partnership with schools. So what you're going to see here, we asked one of our lead teachers, his name is Sizwe, he's a trainee teacher, studying to be a teacher, working with paper video at the LEAP schools, and we asked him to compile a little video about his work with students and teachers with the paper video project. And we think this sort of, if you could call it a three-legged stool in a way of, there's a teacher development organization, there's schools, and there's some product or some device or some kind of implement that can get leveraged into that space. And what we found is sometimes when there's an innovation, there's a lack of understanding of context. And I really appreciate Jamie and the city work about the EdTech startup and meetup, because there's an ed piece and there's a tech piece, and I think there's a gulf somewhere in between. And I think there's lots of really great, shiny, innovative products, and there's huge need in the ed world, but there's not a huge conversation between those two contexts. So I think the three-legged stool, if I can kind of put out that sort of metaphor of the schools, there's an idea, an innovation, and then there needs to be some kind of integration into that space, and appreciation that that space existed before there was an innovation and will probably exist after. So, I mean, we've learned a lot of mistakes and learned a lot of lessons, and we have our team here who have been involved in that work. We have David, Glenn, and Jeremiah, who all have different backgrounds between teacher training and classroom teaching, as well as IT and software development. But what I'll do now is you guys can play the video, and then we can talk about our work again after and questions about the actual program.
Everyday teachers, especially those in under-resourced areas, face the challenge of teaching to a class of several learners, with each one of them having different backgrounds, cognitive abilities, and physical challenges. One way of meeting this challenge is differentiated learning. The Global Teachers Institute, together with the technology partner Paper Video, has been using a differentiated learning tool to make exam revision more effective. This is how it works. Learners take a revision exam in a particular subject. Their exam paper is marked with some scored. Once they received their marked paper, other than the teacher going through their entire exam answers on a blackboard, each learner has access to the Paper Video app on a tablet or their phone. The exam paper has a QR code for each question, and the learner can scan the QR code for the question they found challenging and get a short instructional video on how to solve that question.
Oh, bit of a curveball there, but guess what? They've given us a clue to tell us how to solve this curveball. Let's see what that clue is. Let's see how we're going to solve this one. Okay, so here's our equation. We have x multiplying equal.
This way, each learner can focus on covering just the work they are struggling with. This is how differentiated learning works. Global Teachers Institute, with its experience in working with teachers at under-resourced schools, realized that the initial paper video solution, which relied on videos being streamed via the internet, was not going to be cost-effective, especially in the many rural areas where we worked. We worked with the paper video to help them create a solution for our rural schools. The paper video hub, an all-in-one box containing enough storage to hold over 700 hours of videos, with a Raspberry Pi media server and a wireless router to deliver the content. Learners connect to this router via their app instead of to the internet. Differentiated learning using paper video has proved to be a very successful intervention. A group of 300 students in Jane Fest, rural Limpopo, were given 96 hours of exam revision using paper video in 2016. In just 24 weeks, we saw the average mathematics mark go from 42% to 61%, and science mark can be a game changer in South Africa, especially when coupled with sound pedagogy and good monitoring and evaluation, as well as ensuring solutions fit our unique challenges, such as high bandwidth costs.
Are the paper video people here? Okay, no, I didn't think so, but they were going to try to make it. So this is some of the team. This is a very small slice of the team who was involved in this. Jeremiah, who's our IT guy. David, who has a background in software development and worked with Yellowtail. Maybe people might be familiar with Yellowtail software. Very fortunate to have someone who left that space and got into, great, fantastic, who got into this space as well. And then Glenn, who's a classroom teacher, a curriculum and training specialist. And I'll pass it over to them and also open up for questions. But just one comment about why I love that, and I think we love that, is it's what that does as a teacher trainer. I'm not a tech person, and I need it quite simple. And my emphasis is sort of really about how do we enhance teachers' development. And what that does is that's a great plug-in. Differentiated learning is what we're teaching our teachers, what we're teaching our learners, and it slots right into the development and growth of a teacher and enhances a classroom experience in all the objectives of which the department will want, that the teacher will want, the learner will want, and then teacher development organizations like ourselves will want. And so I think it's important to just sort of highlight that it isn't what, there's a term called teacher-proof stuff. I don't know, has anyone ever heard of teacher-proof? I'm obviously not into teacher-proof because I think teachers aren't going anywhere, and teachers are a resource. And one little tidbit for the designer creatives in the room, teachers don't like teacher-proof stuff. And so if you bring teacher-proof stuff to a teacher, you might not find that implemented. School leaders don't really like school run-around materials, but when people find interventions and innovations that enhance the work that they're already mandated to do or trying to do, they soak it up, they eat it up, and they love it. And I think paper video was a really great example of satisfying teacher development, schools, and individual needs. So I don't know if there's any comments you guys want, or should we just open it up for questions?
Actually, by the way, you heard the similar accents and the similar names. I'm Glenn. But the thing is that this is an example of a teacher-centered learning. And so the thing is, I want to flip this around for just a couple of minutes, and we're going to do student-centered, just like paper video, where I want you to talk to the person next to you for 1 minute about what questions you have and what you thought after seeing that video. Because instead of being passive and hearing us as the expert, talk to the person next to you. And what we'll do is, when you see me saying 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, at 1, no one's talking. Okay? Check for understanding? Yes? 1 minute, talk to the person next to you.